What is up, humans of the cardboard? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we've got a really exciting deck profile. It's Unchained. I have not built this deck in a minute. I mean, it might be a whole year since I've really gone and looked at this deck. And you guys know I like to build a lot of different decks, but this deck really holds a special place in my heart. On when this deck came out, like the design for it is one of my favorite like new age decks that design wise, at least aesthetically, but I also really like the way the deck functions. And I think this deck would have been meta if your Unchained monsters triggered when being sent from field or grave instead of being destroyed. But like maybe that'd be too good. But either way, I really love where the deck is at. I can't wait to show you my list. So let's just hop right into things. All right, let's just start off with our first three monsters here. These are the most important ones, like for sure. They are your engine. They get you so much. They get everything going. So here we start off with 3 copies of Aruha, Rakia, and Sarama. We max out on them. Some people only play 2 Sarama. I kind of see that, but you also have grind games where you like really need the third. So I like it. You also want to see them. They're all 3 good to see because worst case scenario, you can play some, like 2005 Yu-Gi-Oh! And like set one of these and then like set a card and like because they're just Mystic Tomato when they're destroyed. So it's pretty good. But yeah, out of these, my favorite one's probably Aruha because he allows you to play through the disruption the most. But Reiki is still really good. Even popping stuff quickly on your opponent's turn gets you to summon like Soul straight out of the deck to get disruption, or to trigger some other kind of interruption or get you resources on your opponent's turn, which is really good. And Sarama. Sarama's like so insane. Like setting back a card is so good with like the traps specifically. The fact that you can just set one of the traps back to the field and then pop something else to then like get a float. And worst case scenario, you can still pop the trap you set just to get that to float. Is insanely good. So this card like turn after turn gets you like so many resources. So really like this card. This card was amazing for the deck when it came out. All right, for the big boys, you're in your main deck boss monsters. You've got 2 copies of Abominable Unchained Soul and 1 copy of Unchained Soul of Disaster. So Abominable Unchained Soul is really good when he's summoned. You can discard a card and then non-targeting destroy 1 card on the field. That's pretty good. And then Disaster can target a monster your opponent controls and link off with it, which is really cool. It just gives you a really nice piece of removal. A lot of your removal in the deck is destruction based, so having something you can do on your turn that gets you that non-destruction based, like clears a monster off the field, is actually really big. Gets you into some key plays in the mid game. But I would never want to play more than 1. This card is the worst card to draw in the deck. It's legit the only brick, and yeah. But I could see somebody trying to play 3 Soul. I just don't think I'd play 3 Disaster, like ever. All right, so that's it for the monsters in the main. Only 12. Well, for the Unchained stuff at least. I do play 3 Ash. I kind of go back and forth on this card because I do think Dimension Shifter is a playable card in the deck, and obviously like a house, especially going second. But it does hinder you. That's the one thing. Like, it doesn't, like, fully kill your deck. All your float cards still float because they don't say destroy them into the graveyard. They just say if they're destroyed. You can do it, but it's tough. Because, like, you lock yourself out of using, like, Sarama's effect. You lock yourself out of using something like Disaster's effect to summon from grave, or either of your links to add back from grave when they are destroyed or anything. So you are hurting yourself for sure at the end of the day. But so right now we're playing like the slightly lower ceiling version, I guess, by playing like the Ash and the Imperm, which I'll show you in a little bit. But you could try and fit in Shifter, or maybe you side it for the matchups you feel like it's too good not to have. That's it for the monsters. 15 in the main. Moving on to the spells. Only 2. Really keeping it simple here. Triple copies of Abomination's Prison and triple copies of Pot of Extravagance. There's not much to explain here. Like, this card's insane. This deck really has so much, right? Like, the entire deck floats. It makes disruption pretty easily. It has the ability to get offensive and push for game. And it has consistency with stuff like this. And then also being able to play Extravagance. The extra deck is important, but not absolute necessity for this deck. So So extravagance is fine because you really only care about like 2 or 3 cards in the extra. So as long as you play those at higher numbers, obviously they live through at least 1 extravagance and you're just getting like hella pluses and still able to bring it home. So that's it for the spells, which obviously means we've got 19 traps in the deck, which is probably kind of high, but 3 of them are in perm. So it's kind of like, okay, 3 of them are in perm. That could be another monster hand trap. So it's more like 16 traps, but we'll count in perm because why not? All right, starting off with the Unchained cards. We've got triple escape and triple chamber. This is very standard. Everybody plays 3 of these cards. They're just so good, right? Because like not only do they do what they do, and this is kind of like Call the Haunted in Archetype, but better. And this is kind of Archetypal Icarus attack, but in the context of the deck, kind of better as well. But also they have the really cool effect all of the spell and traps do. And I didn't even say this about Prison. This card searches any Unchained card, but also if it's popped while it's set, it just specials an Unchained monster straight out of the deck. So really good utility. It makes it so that opening 2 of that card is actually a combo, which is cool. And these are the same. If they're popped when they're set, they get that. So if their actual effects aren't great, then like you just still get to like use them as engine pieces. You know what I mean? Pop them off Rakia, pop them off Aruha, pop them off Sarama, whatever you want, just to extend another monster out of the deck if that's more useful to you at the time. So I love that flexibility. I also love the fact that we're playing a trap deck and all of our, well, not all of them, but a lot of our spells and traps, or at least half of them, or the in Archetype ones, pretty much are going to persuade our opponent from like not siding in back row hate. Like Cosmic's obviously fine, but if they are siding Twister, which has been popular in this format, Harpy's Feather Duster, Lightning Storm. God, Lightning Storm is so awful versus this deck. A lot of people's side decks are just rendered useless versus this deck. So that's where I really like this deck, is like in that like even going into games 2 and 3 where your side deck is specifically tailored for the meta, but a lot of the side deck cards that the meta is playing for the meta doesn't really work against you quite as well a lot of the time. So you definitely have a big advantage there. So yep, got to box out on those. Then for some other traps, triple copies of Torrential Tribute, triple copies of Infinite Impermanence, and double copies of Heavy Storm Duster. So yep, these are some of the other traps, the other utility cards here. Torrential's just insane, like we've gone over here already. Torrential, your whole deck gets you a resource when it's destroyed. So every time you're wiping something on your field, you're plussing off of it super, super hard. It's really, really good. While your opponent just like goes minus, like super minus. So really good card. You could play this. You could potentially try and play Needle Sealing. I'm just not sure. I'm just not convinced that this deck is quite good enough at putting enough monsters on field to make Needle Sealing super live all the time. So I kind of like Torrential more. Plus this deck is pretty good at summoning monsters on the opponent's turn, which allows you to trigger your own Torrential, so you don't even always have to wait for your opponent to give you the perfect activation point. You can set it up yourself, which is really good. Imperm is Imperm. I like it. Doesn't trigger Triple Tactics Talents, doesn't trigger Gamma, and yeah, so whatever. It's pretty good. And then Heavy Storm Duster. I actually like this card a lot. A couple different reasons. One, you can pop your own card. So again, like making use of that. You could pop your own traps. You could even pop your extra copy of Prison if you opened it just to summon out of the deck, while also popping another card if you want. This card just has like really good utility, and it feels like the format, like outside of like Drytron, like this card's hitting like every single deck, and it's actually really useful, really good. So yeah. I like this card. I like this card a lot. It's just a 2 of because we are finishing up our trap lineup with 2 Trap Trick and triple Solemn Strike. Yeah, so I don't want to overdo it with Trap Trick. I think 3 just feels like a little bit too many, but for the 3 ofs, it makes it essentially like 5 ofs in the deck, except for the Unchained, because we have the 3 spell, that technically like 8 ofs if we need them. Torrential is like a 5 of, Imperm's a 5 of, and Storm Duster is a 4 of. So I like that it makes those a little bit more consistent there. One thing I will say is I am considering dropping like a copy of Torrential because it's searchable off this. I could still have 4 copies of it in the deck, but it means I'm probably only able to resolve 1 a duel. So I kind of like having it at 3, but if I dropped 1, I could play Wailing, which is the continuous spell in the archetype. It doesn't come up all the time, but it actually isn't a horrible 1 of, because it is still just one of those cards that you can just like set up like get it engraved, and then like every time you go through Sarama, you can like potentially get it back, which is pretty useful. So I definitely don't hate that, but for now I'm going with the 3, but I keep that in mind. That's something you can choose to do in your list. And then strike, like it's no secret, guys. Like, strike is one of the best traps. It has been one of the best traps generically for a long time. I also think Ice Dragon's Prison is pretty important in the deck. I just don't have them yet. Probably post Megatins, I'll have my Ice Dragon's Prison, and I would consider playing them. I still think this list is good. I think I might try and wiggle some things around, though. Like, maybe I would drop the one Torrential and maybe drop something else for a... Maybe drop 1 strike just to play the Ice Dragon's Prison, because I'd want it to be trap trickable, and I'd still have 4 copies. But the main thing is like Dragoon. Dragoon is not hit on the ban list, and so to answer decks that make Dragoon, all of this deck's removal is either targeting or destruction. It's one or the other, and so you need to have Astro Dragoon, because you can just like straight up lose to that card really hard. Yeah, so really annoying. All right. Moving on here to the extract. That's 40 cards in the main, by the way, keeping it consistent. We want to draw the perfect number of everything. I love the control build. There are builds that are like hard going second, but I prefer the going first build with traps. That's just my steez. All right, moving into the Unchained lineup here for the extra deck. Triple copies of Unchained Soul of Rage, triple copies of Unchained Soul of Anguish. Apologies for missing the 3rd copy there. I thought I had 3, but I guess before I never really thought to myself. For a long time, I was like, oh yeah, Extravagance is a staple in Unchained, and then I realized you really only care about like 2 cards in the extra deck, and it's probably these 2, really. And then I was like, shit, now I need 3 and 3. But really, really good. This guy allows you to quick link off with an opponent's special summoned monster during their main phase, which is really strong. They're just helping clear monsters out of the way while getting you into another one. Anguish is cool. He's not a quick effect, but he does just let you target a monster your opponent controls and link up with them. They can only link up into dark monsters, by the way, which definitely matters. It's definitely something to keep in mind, but still really good nonetheless. And also, if either of them are destroyed, I believe they just add an Unchained card. They add any Fiend from graveyard back to hand. So maybe Skullmeister is interesting. If you actually need another disruption, you could just get Skullmeister. Anyway, to Unicorn, again, just more extravagant stuff. Like, Unicorn's cool because it's a dark. You can quick link with the Unchained Soul of Rage off with your opponent's monster. You clear 1 monster into this, and then activate this, discarding card to spin another card. So sometimes this is going to be better than going into Anguish. You just have to decide situationally, like which one is better at that moment in time. 1 Trisbania. This card's pretty good as well. It's another dark, so you can go into it from Rage. And then if you had maybe the trap that's kind of like Call the Haunted, you could quick effect Call the Haunted back a monster and under Trisbania, and then wipe your opponent's back row. If they're playing a really big back row deck and they don't realize what's going on, or like you know what I mean, like a set 4, set 5 pass kind of deck, this card just like blows them out. And then 1 BLS. This is just because your Soul of Disaster and your Abominable Unchained Soul are both level 8s, so they allow you to make this guy with his targeting and destruction protection, which in a certain situation against the right deck. Sorry, there's a little gnat flying around. I'm trying to clap him. But yeah, this card definitely comes up. It's something I never really thought about, but if you can get it, I would definitely recommend it, because it can definitely just come up and like steal games for you, and that's what you're looking for. Because like outside of Rage, Anguish, Unicorn's nice to have, and like I guess like Abomination, like nothing is fully needed in the extra. So for the link 4s, we're on double copies of Unchained Abomination, 1 access code, and 1 Zeraboros. Abomination's really good, obviously, just because he just gets you like crazy amounts of pops. But honestly, it's funny because in the pure variant of this deck, you really don't make this card that often. It's kind of weird, but it's still cool to have, and it's an archetype and all that stuff. It is nice. Then you have the 1 access code. This card's really good. This card always just feels like better than Abomination. I mean, a couple of your cards do lock you into Fiends, so sometimes you just can't make him. But if you can, he always feels better, because he's just like pops the same amount of cards of this, if not more, and like you just go for game, because him plus any of your 3K beaters is just game. I think of Zoroboros. He doesn't come up all that often. I think one other thing you could potentially look at playing here is the Underworld Goddess. You're not going to make her all the time, but she is Fiend. She's just not Dark. Dude, if she was Dark and Fiend, it'd be insane, because that means Anguish linking off on your opponent's turn could... Oh, never mind. But it does give you an out. So like your small boys lock you into Fiend, so you can still make her, and it does give you an out to like Dragoon, pretty much. And I know the deck isn't great at like spamming monsters like that, enough material to really set that up, but it is possible, and it could potentially save you there. So I think you could potentially swap it for this, but this is also an out to Dragoon as well. You just make him, and if you can summon anything underneath to his zones, he'll banish everything on the field. And then gain a shart load of attack, which can be good. It can just win you games. But you're playing a deck that wants to be destroyed. You don't really want to banish your own stuff. So just be careful the way you use it, because you obviously don't want to banish too much of your own stuff so that you are like killing yourself. And the last card is just Ding. Again, Dragoon out, Dragoon out, Dragoon out, Dragoon out. It's literally the biggest weakness of this deck, is just any deck that summons an untargetable, indestructible beater. This deck needs ways to out him. It's why Ignisters can be a really annoying matchup as well, if you have no way to like stop them from getting to the towers. But yep, comes up, you play a couple level 8s. It's definitely possible to put them both on the field. But yeah, that is it for the deck profile here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, let me know down below your thoughts on the list. What would you change about it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What do you think about the new format with this deck? Like, I think like a lot of the decks are kind of the same. They're all like, a lot of the good decks are still good, but some of them do have like a little ceiling lower to them, so that actually does create a little bit of an opportunity for Unchained to actually get in here in the format and like make a little more noise. It's very cool, but we'll obviously have to wait and see. So I will catch you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.